Fear is one of the oldest instincts we carry. Long before cities, before farming, before writing, fear was already etched deep into the human brain. Fear kept us alive. It sharpened our senses, made us cautious, and forced us to adapt. And nowhere was fear more present than in the world of our ancestors, who faced beasts so powerful and terrifying that their shadows still linger in our imagination today. To understand the origin of fear, we have to go back more than 2 million years, to Africa, where the first members of our genus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and later Homo sapiens, emerged. These early humans were fragile compared to the monsters that surrounded them. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. What they did have were brains and hands capable of shaping tools. But before those tools could make them hunters, humans were prey. Imagine stepping onto the African plains at dusk. The grass rustles. A shadow moves. Out of the tall reeds emerges a lion, larger than any alive today, with a mane thick and dark. In the distance, you hear the laughter of hyenas, not the spotted scavengers we know now, but giant hyenas weighing more than 200 kilograms, capable of crushing bones with a single bite. And above the trees, the silhouette of a massive eagle circles, eyes locked on vulnerable children. In this world, fear was constant. But lions and hyenas were just the beginning. Our ancestors also faced animals that no longer exist. Beasts so strange and so deadly that it is hard to believe they once roamed the earth. One of the most formidable was the straight-tusked elephant, or Paleoanthropological. Standing more than 4 meters at the shoulder, with tusks that stretched as long as 4 meters each, these giants were larger than any elephant alive today. For early humans, they were both a threat and a temptation. A single carcass could feed an entire group for weeks. But to approach such a beast meant risking instant death under trampling feet or stabbing tusks. Hunting them required planning, cooperation, and courage. And elephants weren't the only colossal herbivores. On the plains, massive buffalo, some twice the size of modern Cape buffalo, grazed in herds. These animals were armed with horns like scythes and tempers as dangerous as their size. To a hungry group of humans, they were a challenge worth the risk. But one wrong move, one miscalculated step, and the hunters became the hunted. Predators came not just in feline or canine form, but also from primates themselves. In some regions, humans may have encountered Dinopithecus, a giant baboon that stood nearly as tall as a man and weighed more than 100 kilograms. With massive jaws and long canine teeth, it was a predator as well as a competitor. To face such a creature meant facing the fury of an intelligent rival, one that fought not just with strength but with strategy. And then there were the so-called hell pigs, members of the Entelodont family. These were not pigs as we know them, but monstrous omnivores with huge skulls, bone-crushing jaws, and a terrifying reputation. Some grew taller than a man's shoulder, their heads nearly a meter long. They could eat plants, meat, or carrion, making them unpredictable and extremely dangerous. Imagine walking through a forest and hearing the snort of one of these beasts behind you. Fear would seize your body instantly. These encounters shaped us. Fear was not an enemy, but an ally. It taught us to listen, to watch, to plan. It made us cautious around shadows and noises. The rustle in the grass, the snap of a twig, the distant roar, all were signals of danger. Fear tuned our senses like a survival alarm system. And because of it, we learned to stick together. Alone, a human was vulnerable. In groups, humans became formidable. Fear drove cooperation. As humans evolved, their relationship with these beasts grew more complex. They were no longer just prey, they became competitors. With stone tools, humans began scavenging carcasses, stealing meat from the kills of lions and hyenas. This was a dangerous game. Approach too soon, and you faced the fury of predators. Approach too late, and there was nothing left but bones. But fear did not paralyze our ancestors. It pushed them to take risks that eventually paid off in survival. By the time Homo erectus appeared around 2 million years ago, humans were becoming hunters themselves. Spears replaced stones. Fire became a weapon. Yet even with these tools, the beasts of the ancient world were terrifying opponents. Woolly rhinoceroses with horns longer than a man was tall roamed the north. Saber-toothed cats like Smilodon ambushed prey with fangs that could pierce through flesh and bone. Cave bears, massive and territorial, defended their dens with deadly force. And still, humans faced them. Sometimes they fought. Sometimes they fled. Always they learned. And the memory of those encounters, of facing death in the eyes of creatures larger and stronger than us, etched itself into our collective psyche. This is why, even today, we fear the dark. Why we flinch at shadows. Why stories of monsters grip our imagination. They are echoes of a time when monsters were real, when survival meant living with fear every single day. Subscribe if you like the video. By the time early humans spread beyond Africa, fear had already shaped their instincts. They carried with them the memory of lions in the tall grass, snakes in the undergrowth, and shadows that could mean sudden death. But as they entered new lands, they encountered beasts stranger and deadlier than anything they had faced before. In Eurasia, the Ice Age world stretched before them, filled with titans. Herds of woolly mammoths trudged through the snow, their tusks curling like enormous scimitars. Towering above most animals, mammoths were generally peaceful, but their size alone made them dangerous. A charging mammoth could flatten hunters and scatter entire groups. To approach one required courage and careful planning, and even then, hunts often ended in disaster. Sharing these frozen landscapes were woolly rhinoceroses, massive creatures armored in thick fur with horns longer than a man was tall. They were aggressive, quick to charge, and capable of goring hunters with terrifying force. To humans, they were both an opportunity and a nightmare. The meat and hide of a rhinoceros could sustain a community, but fear was the first obstacle to overcome before daring to attack. But it wasn't just herbivores that posed a threat. Predators lurked everywhere. The cave lion, larger than any modern lion, stalked across the plains. Fossils suggest they may have hunted in groups, making them even more dangerous. Imagine being an early human, crouched by a fire at night, hearing the low growl of lions in the dark. The flickering flames offered some protection, but one wrong move, one slip into the shadows, could mean death. Fear of the dark, so common to us today, was born in those moments, when night meant predators closing in. And then there were the cave hyenas, bulkier and more powerful than their modern relatives. They lived in clans, dozens strong, capable of overwhelming almost any prey. Their bone-crushing jaws left behind piles of shattered remains in caves, reminders of their strength. For early humans, stumbling upon a hyena den was a death sentence. The thought of those glowing eyes watching from the shadows, the sound of claws scratching stone, would have been enough to freeze blood. Even more terrifying were the saber-toothed cats. Species like Smilodon in the Americas and Homo in Eurasia were nightmares made flesh. With fangs up to 20 centimeters long, they were built for precision kills. They targeted the throat and belly, ending hunts with a single devastating strike. Unlike lions, they did not roar, they ambushed. To survive in lands where saber-toothed cats ruled, humans had to become watchful, always aware of the slightest movement in the grass. The fear of ambush predators still lingers in us, the instinct to feel watched when alone in the wilderness. But fear did not only come from big cats. In Europe and Asia, humans also crossed paths with cave bears. These giants could weigh over half a ton, towering when they stood on their hind legs. They were largely herbivores, but when provoked, they were unstoppable. Evidence from caves suggests that humans and cave bears often competed for the same shelters. Imagine arriving at a cave seeking warmth, only to find it occupied by a massive bear. Confrontations were inevitable, and fear of these colossal animals must have haunted every decision to step inside the darkness of a cave. Even the waters hid monsters. Rivers and lakes carried giant fish like silurus, while the seas teemed with sharks. For coastal humans, the thought of stepping into the waves carried the same dread it does for many today, the sense that something unseen lurks beneath. This ancient fear of deep water, of hidden predators, is another legacy from a time when danger really did wait below the surface. Crossing into Asia, humans faced yet another giant, Gigantopithecus, the largest ape to ever live. Standing over 3 meters tall, it resembled a massive orangutan, though even larger. While its diet was mostly plants, its sheer size would have made it a dangerous neighbor. Imagine gathering fruit in the forest and hearing branches snap as a creature twice your size moved through the trees. The fear of powerful primates, stronger than any human, is perhaps why our ancestors approached forests with such caution. When humans eventually reached Australia, they encountered creatures that seemed born of nightmares. The land was home to Diprotodon, a giant wombat-like marsupial the size of a rhinoceros. Towering kangaroos with short faces and sharp teeth bounded across the plains. The skies were patrolled by quincana, a crocodile that hunted on land, running after prey with terrifying speed. And lurking in rivers was megalania, a monitor lizard more than 5 meters long, armed with sharp claws and a venomous bite. For newcomers, this alien world must have been overwhelming, and fear was their only guide to survival. Later, as humans crossed into the Americas, new horrors awaited. Herds of bison larger than modern ones thundered across the plains, pursued by American lions and packs of dire wolves. Saber-toothed cats prowled the forests, while giant ground sloths swung massive claws like scythes. These sloths were not the slow, gentle creatures we know today. They were armored giants capable of killing with a single swipe. To stand before one was to feel the raw power of nature, and to fear it deeply. All these encounters etched new layers of fear into the human mind. Fear of the dark. Fear of predators watching from the shadows. Fear of caves that might hold monsters. Fear of deep water, hiding unseen jaws. Each fear was learned through blood and survival, and each became a thread in the fabric of humanity's instincts. But fear was not only about running. It also taught humans how to fight back. Fire became more than warmth. It was a shield against predators. Spears became more than tools. They were weapons to keep monsters at bay. Cooperation turned small, vulnerable groups into forces capable of standing up to lions and mammoths. Fear, far from being weakness, was the forge that hardened humanity. Still, it is worth remembering just how fragile our ancestors were. For every mammoth brought down, there were hunters gored by tusks. For every cave claimed, there were families torn apart by bears or hyenas. Survival was never guaranteed. And yet, against impossible odds, humans endured. Fear is not just a reaction, it is an inheritance. Every tremor of dread, every instinct to run at the sound of a snap in the dark, every shiver at the sight of sharp teeth is a memory written into our blood by the beasts our ancestors faced. And as humans spread across the world, those encounters deepened, shaping fear into something that still rules us today. By the late Ice Age, humans had become skilled hunters. Spears, fire, and cooperation gave them new strength. Yet even then, the monsters of the past continued to haunt their lives. The Americas were filled with giant predators like dire wolves, American lions, and saber-toothed cats. In South America, Arctotherium, a bear taller than any grizzly, reigned over the grasslands. And on the open plains, massive herds of bison and camels thundered, with predators waiting for stragglers. To live in this world was to live in constant confrontation with creatures that dwarfed us in size and power. Every step into new territory carried new fears. Caves might promise shelter, but also hide cave bears. Forests offered fruit but concealed ambush predators. Rivers provided water but held crocodiles. Even the skies were dangerous, filled with eagles and vultures watching for weakness. Survival meant never letting fear go. It had to remain sharp, always. And it did more than keep us alive. It shaped our minds. The fear of darkness, the fear of snakes, the fear of predators stalking from the edges of sight. These aren't random. They are echoes. They are the legacy of a time when a moment's carelessness meant death. Our ancestors who were cautious, who listened to fear, lived. Those who didn't, vanished. Fear became part of natural selection itself. But humanity is more than fear. With every challenge, humans learned to turn fear into power. They lit fires at the mouths of caves to keep out lions. They crafted stronger spears and later bows to strike from a distance. They painted animals on cave walls, not only as art, but perhaps as a way to understand, to master the beasts in their minds. By bringing monsters into stories, they tamed them. Fear became memory. Memory became knowledge. And knowledge became survival. The monsters, however, did not last forever. One by one, The giants disappeared. As climates warmed and humans hunted, mammoths dwindled. Saber-toothed cats vanished. The great ground sloths fell. Dire wolves faded into extinction. Across the continents, the titans of fear vanished, leaving humans behind. For the first time, we were not just prey. We were the ones who had outlasted the monsters. Yet even in victory, fear remained. It never left us, because it had been carved into our nature. When the forests were empty of saber-tooths, we still feared rustling leaves. When the caves were free of bears, we still felt unease in the dark. Fear had become a reflex, independent of the beasts that birthed it. And that is why, even today, our nightmares are filled with fangs, claws, and shadows. We still dream of being chased, of being hunted, because for millions of years, that was reality. Think about it. Why do so many myths and legends across the world tell of dragons, demons, and monstrous beasts? Why do we invent creatures with glowing eyes, sharp teeth, and immense strength? It is because those are the shapes that haunted our ancestors. Dragons are echoes of giant reptiles, demons the shadows of predators in caves, monsters the memories of the animals that nearly erased us. Fear created myths, and myths kept fear alive. Even in the modern world, fear still serves us. It makes us cautious when crossing streets, careful when climbing heights, alert when danger is near. But it also chains us, filling us with anxieties and nightmares. The truth is, fear is both our oldest enemy and our oldest ally. Without it, humanity would not have survived. With it, we conquered the world. So when we ask where fear comes from, the answer is simple. It comes from the beasts. From the mammoths that trampled our ancestors, the lions that stalked them, the snakes that bit them, and the hyenas that tore them apart. It comes from caves filled with bears and rivers filled with crocodiles. It comes from every shadow that once hid a killer. But here is the most extraordinary part. Fear did not stop us. It shaped us. It taught us caution, strategy, and cooperation. It gave us fire, weapons, art, and stories. It made us human. The origin of fear is the origin of survival. And even though the monsters are gone, their memory still walks with us. Every time you jump at a noise in the dark, every time you dream of being chased, every time you feel dread for no reason, you are hearing the voices of the past. You are remembering a time when humanity lived surrounded by monsters. And we survived. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video.